Yeah, as everybody knows, 2020 was a crazy year, but it was a great season of baseball last year, even with all the COVID stuff going on. We had the sign stealing situation dealt with. And we watched the Dodgers win their first World Series in 32 years. So a lot of exciting things there. But coming into this year, it's going to be a little different. The discussion today is, yeah, as you said, baseball's, time frame management, aka how slow it's become in a generation that demands, a more fast pace and exciting aspect to sports, which is probably a reason, MMA and football and basketball are, the more popular sports this last decade almost. So baseball is, starting to slow down more than it ever has been before. I mean, if you take a look back at that World Series that I mentioned, Game 4 alone took 4 hours and 10 minutes. So
That's just too
um,
long.
that's a lot of playing time. And in the final 26 minutes of that World Series, we saw only two balls put into play. And over the 3 hours and 28 minutes of that, entirety of that game, we saw 32 balls put into play. That's one every 6.5 minutes. We saw more pitchers than we did hits. We saw 12 pitchers with 10 hits coming, from a combination of both teams. 27 batters struck out, and that's 42% of all plate appearances. So, that was one of the least watched World Series, game 1 through 6 in history. And I don't know if that had to do with the pandemic or the election going on at this time or all these streaming services taking over, but it's starting to put this time management starts to put a dent in the way people are not only watching baseball but in enjoying baseball as well.
Yes, it does. Absolutely. I gotta agree. Gotta agree, T-Ball. It's kind of crazy because just last season it took an average of 3 hours and 7 minutes to play a nine-inning ball game. Going back to talking about your time management, that's despite fewer hits per game than any other season in 1968 and 1906 to '09. More time of the game, however, pace of action is pretty much the cancer that is eating baseball with it, like we've been talking about. Players are
Yeah, and
messing around and dwindling around. And it's crazy what it's come to nowadays, people.
yeah, I don't know if it's just players, dawdling and taking their time, or if it's just simply hitters unable to hit the ball. I mean, I don't know. I mean, since 2011, players take 2.6 seconds more in between pitches. That's 13 additional minutes a game. And, with 17 seconds of dead time, players putting the ball in play 15.8% of the time. That's down from 18.3% only 10 years ago. And that's a lot of time added for them to all do nothing because it seems like nowadays the game is played in a way where the goal of pitching has become an avoidance of contact altogether. As basically trying to get outs and ground balls, because I remember back to my pitching days, I didn't care if they hit the ball as long as it went to the right spot
You're
and we
right.
made an out. So it's one of those things where, pitchers, I think, are just having to work a lot harder than what they should have. But, we see this passive aggressive game with more breaking balls, and, that accumulates down to, 14 additional pitches per inning as of 10 years ago. More pitches, less contact, more dead time, 259 more pitches per game without the ball putting into play. I mean,
Yeah, that's up.
239 as of 10 years ago. So baseball's already slowed down enough as it is, and it was already hard for people to keep up because it's so slow. And when you've got this generation that's attention span is really, really low, it's really tough. And as of 10 years ago, you saw guys like Nomar Garcia Parra step into the box, and every time the ball, whether he hit it, fouled it off, what happened, he stepped out of the box, he looked at 20 things, he redid his batting gloves, 10 or 15 times on each hand before he stepped back into the box. And that was already slow. And then we move ahead 10 years later, and it's even slower.
Yeah, and fans just like myself. I mean, I was a Griffey guy back in the Griffey days. You know that, but I've slowed away from watching baseball just because of all the things you mentioned. The slowing of the game with everybody taking all this time in between pitches and watching a ball get hit, however many minutes afterwards, it needs to speed up. It truly does because, yeah, baseball is America's pastime, but if it's not exciting, like you were talking about UFC and basketball and football, and it's not high, it either needs to be high end entertainment or it needs to be faster paced. And the baseball game is so slow that I'm not sure what you can do, but I know the MLB and everybody with that and all their knowledge has created some ways to be able to do it. Right? Isn't this right, T-Ball? And
Yeah.
and I guess let me hear these new rules because there are some new rules that could speed up the game and possibly make it just a little more exciting. Like I've always said, right before I give it over to you, I've always said, let the guys juice, let them sign a contract with steroids because there's more entertainment for me, and you're going to crush the ball farther. Now, we've talked about before, taking steroids does not make you hit a ball better, so that's why I like it. But it will make you hit a ball farther. But T-Ball, what's with these new rules that we have? And that could possibly implement and speed up the ball game in baseball.
Yeah, so the commissioner of baseball got on Zoom and got with some guys, and he even touched on the fact that baseball is really, really slow, and he wanted to put some things together to try to obviously take control back of the game, get some more fans, and obviously speed up the game. Now, granted, all these rules that are being implemented are being tried first at the minor league level.
Yeah,
I think a couple of them, which, that's the best place to test it because you have AAA, AA, and single A. So, I mean, it gets spread around a little bit and you don't just force things onto people. I think a couple of these rules are being implemented at the major league level, but slowly and surely. So, first rule, they were talking about getting rid of, defensive shifts. Everybody has to play straight up. All infielders have to be in the dirt. Obviously, outfielders in their rightful positions. So that would be interesting to see because, defensive shifts, those are huge. And you get rid of them, there's a guy that pulls the ball every single time and you can't play that way. I mean, that's tough for a defense. So, you're also talking about, bigger bases that are 15, inches in diameter going to 18 inches in diameter, which
I like that.
I do too, because it encourages base stealing, and not only does it encourage base stealing, but it's going to, prevent injuries. So, you got a second baseman or a shortstop trying to turn a double play. That guy has more room to, slide into the bag. As well as the second baseman or shortstop having a chance to, have more room, because you're talking about 3 more inches in diameter added to that base to allow players to, turn a double play, or even for the first baseman to be able to even get, a quick play thrown over to him without getting stepped on and, tearing, an ankle or something like that. So it's going to encourage base stealing and also, I hope prevent injuries as well. But I thought that was a big one. They should hurry up and implement on that.
Ricky Henderson would have loved those bases getting increased back in the day. Imagine how many more that man would have had. Imagine just anybody who had the ability. Well, I should only say 1/3 of the ability of stealing Ricky Henderson ever had. But any of these other guys out there, especially him, though, what that could have possibly done for career numbers.
But another rule, all pitchers must step off the rubber to pick off. Anybody that, was a pitcher knows that lefties kind of have an advantage. They used to be able to stay on the rubber and basically pick off in the middle of their stride over to first. So that will be eliminated. They're going to have to step off the rubber before they can pick off over there. I think that limiting pickoffs is a big yes in my book on that one. Yeah, moving on. The next rule we got, I wasn't so sure on how this was going to happen. I've heard it's already been implemented over in Japan, but they're talking about an automatic strike zone.
Yeah.
It's basically just to help assist umpires in ensuring balls and strikes are called correctly. So. They're also implementing still the pitch clock. This is something they used last year. There's a lot of advantages to limiting the roster that I won't get into right now, but those are just a summary of some of the rule changes that might be implemented. They said this is going to be a process that comes surely but slowly. I believe one of the representatives for the Major League Baseball Players Association, or one of the execs, was talking about how we're going to make a lot of changes in the next 5 years. If these changes aren't, acclimated and implemented within the next 5 years, I have a feeling baseball is going to be dead. And that would be something I would be very sad to see, because coming from a huge baseball fan and playing my whole life, I'm excited to see what happens with these new rule changes. And hopefully, Major League Baseball gets their clock management taken care of. But I'm not sure. We'll just have to find out.
You said they're going to implement this over the next 5 years, 5 seasons, however you want to see it, right? If baseball's already so damn slow and so boring and losing so many ratings, why are we going to take 5 years to get this done? Why not? Why don't we take, everything that they've figured out right now of all these new rules of trying in AAA, AA, and single A and all that stuff? Why not give it a 1 year test, or even like a half a year test, and then just be like, boom, let's get this out there, because we've got to change the state of baseball, or we're going to lose it. If it's this slow and it's going to take us 5 years of data, statistics to figure all this out, I say push it out after a year, because I know for a fact that everything that you've already talked about today, I'm excited for, and I hope that at least 90% of it is put into baseball.
Then that can bring me to a conclusion of the whole instant replay thing. Instant replay is another one of those things that's taking up a lot of time, on stolen bases to make sure, the correct call was coming down. That's just more time being taken out. And they kind of did that with the instant replay. They talked about it, and then 1 year they're just like, okay, now instant replay is on for everything. Right. And then a lot of people were upset, and then they're wrong times for instant replays, or they weren't doing instant replays on times they were supposed to do the replays. It just became more of a hassle because they didn't pan it out in the minor leagues. They didn't spend more time on making sure they had. It's like computer software. You put out a program, you beta test it, and then you take all the bugs and you get rid of it, and however long that takes. That's the same rule. And we're talking about a lot of rules here that they're trying to implement. I mean, I probably just named off 10 or more. So, yeah. And those are big rules, especially no defensive shifts, pitch clocks, no timeouts, limiting pitch rosters. These are big, big changes to the game itself. And there might be some people out there that aren't going to take too kindly to some of these, especially pitchers.
Look, here's what I'm going to say about the instant replay. I don't even want instant replay in baseball. And the reason why is because there wasn't replay all these years. I mean, imagine all these other guys that did get replay, and how many missed calls there were then, or missed strikes or balls or what have it, out, safe, you name it. Okay. And baseball's been fine without it. So why not just keep it out of the game? I mean, I get it. Some people want reassurance, but then you're saying, if I got to have this much replay, especially in baseball, then we can't even trust our refs anymore. However you want to see them. And what's the point of them? Might as well just have a whole camera system that does the whole game. I mean, the automated strike zone, like, how much more do we need to help the umps that they've been doing it just fine all this time? So why do we need to put a bigger, automatic strike zone? I get it, kind of helps, sizes it up for them. But I want to go off of the first instinct that happens. I don't want to change it after that. If it was an out, it was an out.
That's the good thing about baseball too. And, the thing about touching on the strike zone, automatic strike zone thing is, if these umps are going to get, more help calling balls and strikes, that means they're going to take less money.
True.
So we should make their job easier, but yet get paid $120,000 a year.
Yeah, or more.
So there's questions there as well. But I think when it comes to the whole instant replay or any of these rules being implemented into the game, I think you got to look at it from the point of view it's for the game's sake. It's for the life of the game.
Yes.
Like I said, baseball's a dying sport. It's been around longer than the Civil War. I mean, it happened, I'm not lying when I say this is America's first sport. It's old. It's about as old as America. And, it's been so, I guess, stagnant for so long, because it almost died once. And then, the home run battle took place, and that revived it, and then it wanted to die again, and Griffey revived it. And there's a lot of moments that happen in baseball that help revive it, but it's not on a significant change to where it changes the pace or the opposition or big aspects. Like, yeah, we see great moments in baseball, and that, reinstills the love of the game into people's hearts. But unless you make drastic changes quickly, obviously first beta testing them in minors or what have you, then yeah, this game's going to die off.
If there was one, like I said, if there's one thing, there's something to change. People are going to laugh at me, and I'll say it to my dying day. I wish that there was some kind of contract thing a guy could sign for steroids. Everybody doesn't have to take steroids. It could just be whoever wants, or PEDs, you name it. But I just want more entertainment. I want to see a ball hit farther, harder, you name it. So I want steroids in it, like we've talked about before. If I could change one thing, it would be that, and no more instant replay.
Well, I think if you're going to start anywhere, it should start with two things. Number one, let Pete Rose into the Baseball Hall of Fame.
You fucking got it.
Number two, universal DH rule.
Yes.
I know they've been talking about it for years and years. They've talked about it recently. I still don't know if they're going to do it, but I'm all for universal DH. You want to speed up the game? You want to make things more exciting? More batters. We'll have to see what the future holds for Major League Baseball, but if you want to find out about it, you're going to find about it right here on the Heated Waves podcast, on your favorite YouTube sports channel. I'm your boy T-Ball.
And I'm Mr. Bradley. You stay classy, YouTube.
As always, thanks for stopping by.